Welcome back, everybody. It's been a while, but this is another Noob Hammer interview. We have Nevin Smith back again. He just, well, not just, but at the end of July, he went to the Gemhammer RTT where he took a modified version of his Corvus Black Star list, and he took first place, raking the whole field. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that. But, Nevin, why don't you tell me how you've been, man?
Been doing all right. Since the last time I was on with you, there have been a couple of developments. As of right now, I'm ranked number 33 in the ITC Midwest circuit. I literally never paid attention to my ITC ranking before, and then somebody just asked me what it was, so I decided to look it up. So that's kind of exciting.
Nice to have that little pat on the back, that a vindication for all your hard work.
Um, I guess it's kind of one of those things where you get to the edge and you're just like, you start looking at that top 20 and you're like, ooh, there's some big names in there.
That's the Midwest, you said.
hmm
Very cool. So are those the folks that you frequently run into at these RTTs?
No, no. I think I might actually be the best player in Ohio right now in terms of ITC ranking, because a lot of those guys look like they were out like in Michigan, Illinois, which is a little bit northwest of my normal stomping grounds.
Interesting.
But bigger events, definitely probably run into some of those people.
Very cool. Hey man, congratulations. I know from the conversations that you and I have had on Discord just between these two interviews, like you are a meticulous person who really thinks through like all these combos and stuff. So, or potential combos. You've got a really analytical mind, and that's why I wanted to have you back on. Plus, everybody loves that triple Corvus list, man. I don't know. I don't know if you've seen some of the feedback or the comments on the last video, but it definitely pulls people's attention in. So, you want to just jump right in to the list then?
Sure, we can do that.
Cool. So, for those of you who have seen the last video and this, the list is very much the same. But I'm going to go through it again verbally just for any new people or for folks like me who might need a refresher. So you have a slash captain ish with the Xenophase blade and the Dominus Aegis for that sweet 5-up invul bubble. Got a Proteus kill team in your first. I should mention it's two patrols. All right, actually, it's patrol and is it a patrol
Yeah,
on
it
it?
should be two patrols.
Yeah, okay. It's two patrols. Haha. um, so that's obviously to make room for that third Corvus, but so then in the first patrol you've got one Proteus kill team. This time with a Terminator. I believe that you have two other Proteus kill teams. Yep, both have one Terminator. In it including a Cyclone missile launcher, which makes me personally very happy. I see a bunch of combi flamers in here, which we'll talk about later. Um, you have a Venerable Dreadnought, three Redemptors total, three Corvuses total, and then the other HQ that you need is, of course, having that many vehicles. You're gonna bring a Primaris Tet, Tech Marine, nowhere to hide. It looks like you grab the Ultramarines Warlord trait to regen command points on a 5-up. Um, and the Tome of Ectoclade. So, um, when we talked last, like I think I go on a small tangent of about how excited I was that you had trimmed like every piece of fat off of that list that you possibly could. I think you were even running an ironclad dreadnought because you didn't have the points for like another Vendread or or another or a third Redemptor or a third oh man, Contemptor. There we go. So
No, I was definitely running 3 Contemptors, even in that other list.
okay, but none
Because the
now.
one I took
I
to
see.
Michigan, it was 3 Contemptors, a Venerable, and an Ironclad.
Yeah, there we go. But I mentioned the Ironclad because it's just slightly less expensive than a normal Vendread, but like your list was tuned down to that level where the Ironclad is all you could like afford, right? I think your list wanted another Vendread, but you didn't quite have the points.
Uh, well, the Ironclad was a bit of a uh, a style pick and a tech pick, because they when they hit a vehicle, they're flat 6. They
Mm-hmm.
come with an 8, reroll 1s to hit in melee. So for 1 CP, you can just drop a thing with 2 heavy flamers and has very severe anti-vehicle, anti-monster threat, because when it's not hitting a vehicle, it's Chain Fist is 2d3 damage. So they can really, really, really just spike up and take something very expensive and valuable down in the charge. And being T8, they also have benefits there as well.
Well, my bad then. I guess I was um thinking too narrowly. But we get into this list. So you still have the 3 Corvuses, which are beautiful, obviously. Best looking model in the game. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Or at least the best flyer. You've still got all the aspects arrays so that you're ignoring cover. Um, you've got that 5 or 3 tempter blob with the tech marine with nowhere to hide. So you're still really focused on making sure that most of your big shooting ignores cover.
Hmm.
So I guess so. What was the general thought process on building this list then? Like what did you? I mean, effectively, the only thing that's still the same as the captain, the tech marine. You have some dreads, and then the 3 Corvuses, but all the tech within them are slightly different. Why did you change it up quite so much?
So I paired back some points off of the Redemptors. I switched out the Gatlings on the two the side Gatling, the smaller ones, on the two, and I also removed the Icarus pods to save points. Kill team's got a big shakeup because I'm throwing Terminators in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they uh, they serve a purpose within the list to allow me to just be a little bit more tanky. One of the things I definitely felt that the list needed was it needed to have a little bit stronger ground presence outside of the bubble that I'm putting off from the captain. And so having being able to chuck a Terminator into a squad, because you're paying the opportunity cost of being blastable, but on the other hand, it also means that I have choices on what save profile I'm taking against weapons. I have options on who gets to be the last model standing. So there have been situations where a unit gets killed down and it's literally just a Terminator left, but it's an OBSEC Terminator that I can run and hide in a terrain piece. And then you have to have a way of digging a Terminator wound model that's just sitting there scoring me the objective. So they can become very frustrating to deal with for an opponent just because of the difference in the way that you can allocate saves.
The Proteus kill teams are all built slightly there. So you got your Storm Bolter Chainsword Proteus kill team here. A lot of Storm Bolters.
Hmm.
And then you've got a combi flamer, 3 combi flamers, some storm shields. The Terminator has a cyclone missile launcher, and the other I see power swords instead of chainsword. On the last one, you have 3 frag cannons and rarely seen. And also, I see got some storm shields on that team. Well, so you've got some a melee threat squad. You have a squad that's kind of like tankier with don't charge me, bro shenanigans going on, and then you have the Deathwatch frag cannon, which also, if it's a large enough unit, uh, charging you also has some don't charge me, bro aspects. So obviously each team is built slightly differently. So do you want to start with that melee threat team?
Yeah, sure. Um, so being stacked with chain swords and storm bolters, they have a a unit profile that they want to attack. So you're still not um, taking this unit and throwing it into, like, say, a brick of Deathwing Terminators. That's just not their job. Um, and with having that Terminator in there, again, just it allows me to change things up, and it also you got to look at kind of the points costs on these units. I'm trying to make sure that there's nothing in this list that is more than 200 points.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is compartmentalized, so it's scary enough that whatever it is that I'm using it for, it's going to relatively efficiently trade, whether even if it's just to do damage into a unit, not necessarily to kill it outright.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I'm not feeling horrendous if I've had to make plays where it's like, oh, all I did was literally get out and die. But through the course of the tournament, there were multiple instances where it's like, oh, I flew over and my Corvus got shot out from underneath me, but then I emergency disembark, and now all of a sudden I've knocked down your banner and I hold your objective on your turn, and now it becomes your problem to have to pull me off of it. Otherwise, I score your primary.
Yeah. And so again, you have one of these squads in each of the Corvuses, or
Yes.
okay. So then, what's holding your backfield are the Redemptors and the characters.
Yeah, Redemptors, characters. That Venerable is pretty much always a sit in the back piece of just, I sit on the objective, I provide more plasma cannon fire, and I'm just, difficult to remove. If somebody wants to take the time to try and take out, the Venerable and not anything else in the list, it's like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, please do.
Um, I, yeah, I'm not crying any tears.
So then, going back through your Proteus, got the you've got the squad with the storm shields, the flamers, and the cyclone missile launcher. Was the missile launcher a tech choice for a specific reason, or did you just have some extra points and you're like, I like missiles?
The Cyclone kind of is a little column A, little column B. They're a little expensive, um, but they do provide nice utility versus, you're shooting into an armored list. They
Mm-hmm.
can take off some wounds. Um, it's also kind of an expectation of, oh, there are a couple Ad Mech builds that are floating around, a couple of Drukhari builds that are floating around, where being able to fire a flak missile and do mortal wounds into a flyer
Yeah.
could be really, really handy to have.
So Deathwatch Terminator. Because it's a stratagem, right?
Yes.
Actually not showing.
It may have been renamed with the new edition.
Yeah, it's not showing up on Waha. I know that I have seen it before. It effectively allows you. You're firing at aircraft specifically. It's 2d3 mortal wounds, and you only fire one shot. And then once the mortal wound done firing that one
Mm.
model. I know it still
Um,
exists. I wonder where it went. Oh well. So
yeah,
that's against those like there's those Ad Mech lists with that's really those like heavy on their bombers. I forget which one of
mhm.
the flappy bombers or flappy flyers that is, but and then the so and then you picked a power fist as well, so that's more for cracking open like those big heavy vehicles or high toughness units. So um,
Mhm.
what is that the entirety for the reason of the Cyclone missile launcher being there, or?
Yeah, it's just kind of a utility pick. Um, Being able to, because you can, since it is mounted on a Terminator, you could conceivably get that to hit down to a 2-up.
Mm-hmm. You're the
Because if you
first
don't
baby.
move, yeah, you
Yeah.
Fury the first, but then the strat gives you additional to hit versus aircraft. So you basically can ignore that -1 from the plane, and if you haven't moved, then you play Fury the first, and then you're hitting on twos with it, which is something that actually came up um, in the second game of the tournament,
Yeah,
but not from me.
I want to get into that because I saw you had a win with 39 points, and that was that's pretty cool. So um, let's just finish up the list discussion real quick. So why the combi flamers? Like I know you have that watch um sergeant in the squad that is actually watch captain Artemis model.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if you all haven't heard the story of why he runs Artemis as a sergeant, go ahead and listen to that first interview because it's pretty funny. But
Yeah,
yeah, you
he's permanently demoted.
three combi flamers. So go ahead. Why the flamers?
Yeah. So they provide nice horde clearance. They provide volume of attacks. Um, they're not really there to break the back of anything hard in the enemy's list. Like none of these kill teams are really designed to go head to head with the enemy. They're all there to hit you on the side, hit you in a weak point, um, inflict some level of damage, but not really. They're not really there to just take out a person. Now, if there's an opportunity for me to get a clever deployment that gets me in on a character or something like that, because there are a lot of squishy Drukhari characters and Ad Mech characters that are floating around. They can conceivably go in on an assassination run, which is effectively something they can do really well. Because I've also packed a number of power swords into the squad,
Mm-hmm.
which gives them that utility to kind of pick up and play.
And then the storm shield, and again the Terminator, or just choosing which body, so allows you to really get some mileage out of this squad, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like if you're struck by, let's say, a Dark Lance, you can just kill one of the cheap 23-point guys, because you know that's gonna be at least 4 damage if it gets through. But for like little middling piddly fire, you could take it on one of the Storm Shield guys or the Terminator, uh, especially if you're in cover. That's a cool tech choice, man. I've been wanting to play around with combi flamers more. I think that this squad, like, I see it and I initially thought, okay, this is definitely for like clearing hordes, other than the power fist, because like if you drop this thing out of a Corvus next to a 20-man blob of warriors, I mean, you're gonna have a fun time as you murderize that probably that entire 20-man squad. That's a lot of firepower. You got blast
Yeah.
from the cyclone missile launcher, all the flamer shots. You got, frag grenades, and then you got all those combi shots, and yeah, that's a lot of firepower. So, and then your last Proteus kill team here, another kind of heavy weapons team. You got 2 storm shields, another Terminator, and then the 3 frag cannons, which I admit I build every single one that comes in the little Deathwatch veteran packs, but I've never put one on the table. So tell me about your frag cannons, my man.
They allow me to do more plink damage onto vehicles and to have a little bit higher strength profile going into a little bit harder targets. Um, they handle things like a lot of the Gravis armored models, things like that, because they can flip to that multi-damage weapon profile to get around some of um, the strats that you can play to try and keep that type of model alive. They
That's a good
can
point.
put
Oh,
out,
yeah, that's a great point, actually.
yeah, it comes in pretty clutch when somebody decides that, this corner of the board, I've got, a bunch of plasma inceptors and they're heavily fortified, and then you flip that on, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, um, yeah, half the strat just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, so what Nevin's talking about is the Salt 2 Strength 7 AP 2 Damage 2 profile of the frag cannon makes it so that the Gravis strat for +1 to save against 1 damage weapons is no longer applicable, since obviously that's a 2 damage weapon. So instead of them getting a 1 or a 2 up save against your 1 damage, they're they're gonna go from their innate 3 up to a 5 up, if they're actually struck by this. And assault 2 also means that you can actually roll around the board. You don't have to be locked into one spot if you don't need to be. You could push up really far and um, on and advance and still fire. So, although then all your storm bolters wouldn't be shooting, but
Yeah, it's a couple storms, 3 storm bolters in the squad, but yeah, it is
yeah,
an important piece to play with.
very cool. Have you thought about taking the storm shields on the Terminators at all, or is that just too expensive and it locks them to the Thunderhammer? So you're not really vibing with that.
If I were building like a pure melee squad, I think that would be something
Mm-hmm.
definitely consider. Though at that price point, you start getting into really um, like questionable territory, because like I was saying before, everything in the list is compartmentalized. There's nothing that I'm going to lose at any point in time that is more than 5% of the list, because everything is 200 points or lower,
Yeah.
which makes me feel a lot more comfortable just in terms of like throwing something out there.
Yeah.
because everything dies. Like even throwing the extra Terminators into those units, they don't grant you some magic immunity where it's like, oh yeah, this unit's invincible. It's like, no, if an opponent wants to kill these kill teams, they will wipe them off the board
Yeah.
like it's none of their business to be there, and they won't even blink. But when you throw the Terminators in there, it puts an opportunity of, oh, they undercommitted and now they've made a mistake. And opening opportunities for mistakes in your opponent, that is so important. Because kind of the mindset that I go into a lot of these games with is I expect my opponent to play the best game that they can.
Mm-hmm.
I expect them to make the perfect decision. Um, it's kind of the mentality of, I don't know, uh, if you've ever been in this situation where you may have, like, been playing chess, things like that. There's that mentality in chess where there's always a right move. There's always a perfect move that undoes what you are attempting to do. So when you're opening yourself up for how are my plays going to work, how is this this maneuver going to play out over multiple turns of the game. When you introduce that element of uncertainty, of how your opponent needs to deal with a thing, whether it's in them not having the right amount of forces on a flank to deal with a thing, or they've committed a unit but it hasn't accomplished the goal that it needed to do, that's where you really can exploit opportunities to win.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to what you just said, what presenting opportunities for your opponent to make a mistake, like even if they never make a mistake, if you take away options, even if they make the most optimal choice within the set of options that they have left, if you can remove some of their better options, even if they are playing the best that they possibly can, you are, like you said, you're limiting them greatly, and then kind of making them do what you want them to do, which is huge. Um, so
Mhm.
even if they are always choosing the best course of action in the situation presented to them, you can make it so that that is a suboptimal decision that they're making. And I do like that idea that you had where everything is less than 200 points, because I know that I've played games where I started playing Deathwatch, and I was throwing out those big Indomitor kill teams that are like 450 points, and then they got to be backed up by two 100 plus point models to really stay alive. And then when you lose that brick, you're like, oh damn, that's the linchpin of my army. That sucks. That hurts really bad.
Mhm.
So it's neat that you can just be like, is this worth stopping him? Right? Like, if you're on a hold one, hold two, hold more, and you're currently on uh the same amount of objectives, and you can throw a 200 point unit onto one uh objective to steal 10 points from them, that's huge. That is worth 200 points every time, or almost every time, right? Like, because a lot of the really fun games I've won or lost by like 4 points, 7 points. So if you can do a 10 point swing, that can win you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got those four dreads hanging out with your tech marine and your captain on the backfield. I don't think we have to go into this a whole lot. We've all seen that the current Deathwatch meta is running the dreadnought brick, and then just being unkillable, unmovable, and just having this fairly decently maneuverable base of fire. um, so I mean I don't know if we need to go into that very much. Just to reiterate and jump in at any time if I'm making a mistake here. But your Tech Marine is going to use Awaken the Machine Spirits on a Dreadnought at the beginning of the game. It's probably going on to one of the Corvuses.
Mhm.
But you're gonna awaken the machine spirits. It's there to heal. I don't. Did you give it the master? Yeah. So it's the master
Yep.
of the forge. So it's always healing 3, and then you've got that nowhere to hide aura. So all of that firepower being cranked out from all of those dreads. It ignores cover on one unit that you choose. So you can just evaporate a unit if you need to. And then it's also giving you a little bit of this CP regen. So,
Hmm.
do you find those CP to be clutch that it's regenning you? Because it looks like here
I
you start with 7, which is pretty standard, really, for a Deathwatch list these days.
I find it to really be helpful to have it in the back pocket, because you can bank on having your CP just go a little bit longer, because then you can surprise people in the end game where you're like, oh, you thought this dreadnought was tied up. Actually, for 2 CP, he can fall back and charge, or fall back and be able to shoot,
Mm-hmm.
which can throw people's game plan off quite a bit when you're moving a piece out of their expected realm.
Yeah.
um, when you catch somebody flat-footed with the tricks that Deathwatch can do, it can completely alter the balance of gameplay.
I That's a great point. I've spent a lot of time. I'm trying to get it to that level where I'm always thinking about threat ranges, both of my own and my opponent, so that I can push up as far as I can, but still be zero point 0.1 inches away from that Drukhari advance and charge or whatever, right? Um,
Hmm.
but Deathwatch has those tools in the toolbox to make it so that we can do things that will alter our threat ranges, will just change the way that you think that they play. I've used uh, the White Scars Brotherhood veteran uh, strat to amazing effect, so that now when I'm playing any of my friends, if I have 2 CP, they're always assuming my entire army effectively can actually advance and charge, um, which can be like a huge advantage psychologically, because they don't
Hmm.
know what you're gonna do or when you're gonna do it or what unit's gonna do it, right? So it's awesome. Um,
Yeah, advance and charge on a Redemptor Dreadnought is not a joke.
it's frightening, yeah. Um, and I love that model too. So let's talk about them Corvuses real quick. I think this will wrap up the list discussion. After that, I noticed you're running 2 with the twin assault cannons, 1 with the
Hmm.
twin lasses, and then is there any difference? And then one's got the rocket pod, and the other 2 have the Stormstray missiles. Um, like I said, you've got the Auspex array on all 3, so you're ignoring cover, and then you still have the Hurricane Bolter on them all as well. So, is that a? Do you find that's a decent amount of anti-tank between the missile launchers and the las cannons to pop
Yeah.
up like one heavy threat every turn, basically?
For the most part, yeah, they put in the work where I need them. Though, the thing that I've kind of come to realize about the anti-tank variants, the weapon profiles they're not they don't have enough volume of shots to reliably take out a vehicle by itself.
Yeah.
The Plasma Redemptor typically does most of that kind of level of work. With it, it's overcharged, it's strength 9, it's AP 4. So you have it hitting on 2s, and it's got all the rerolls with the captain and the Tome of the Ectoclades in the back. But the anti-tank variants are very good. On the Corvuses are very, very good at digging out elite infantry and heavier infantry-esque targets like outrider bikes, things like that, which are, you know, relatively tough, have a high number of wounds, but have a small model profile, so people like to hide them behind things, and people like to tuck them into terrain because then they can be like, oh, you know, now I have a 2-up, but all of a sudden, you know, you have a Corvus fly overhead, and it's like, actually, you don't get cover, and because I'm in Devastator Doctrine now, this is an AP4 weapon, and it's, you know, the
Yeah.
rockets do from flat 3, so you're every time you get through, you've killed an Eradicator or a Plasma Inceptor, which is a big loss
Yeah.
for an opponent to have to take when they're expecting those types of assets to be able to contribute later.
So tell me again how you're using these Corvuses generally. Like, I understand every matchup is slightly different, and you're gonna play against Ad Mech laser chickens different than you are against an Orc horde. But like, you know, are you being super aggressive with them all the time? I know that with 3 flyers, you're pretty much guaranteed to max out engage on all fronts as long as you have 2 of them alive.
Yes.
And then you're dropping off troops in the backfield as well. So you know, engage is definitely a thing here. But like, this is the thing. Like, I've only played a few games with flyers, usually 1, so not 3. But this is definitely like a threat overload thing, where when you put 3 flyers down, I mean, how does a opponent usually react to that?
People get really iffy on like their targeting profile. They don't know where to put their weapons. Um, and the other thing too is unless you're fighting into somebody who is carrying a lot of those, you know, extreme long range weapons, you can outrange them. So a lot of the popular Space Marine builds floating around, they like to load up on Plasma Inceptors, Eradicators, Hell Blasters. These are all units with very relatively short threat ranges. Like, you can know what they are. You can know how far that unit moves. You know how far it could shoot you if potentially it needs to advance. So you can pull your aircraft or deploy your aircraft out of range. You know, so turn 1, you can basically say this unit is never going to die unless I choose to give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the opening gambit that you go for is you know what your opponent's secondaries are. So if they're like, oh, I've taken raised banners, then you go, well, is it worth my time to go aggressive, potentially lose the flyers, but then I pop guys out of those flyers and then knock down the banners and then remove their ability to do effective scoring. Like versus Dark Angels, one of the things I'm always looking at
I was
angle wise is
just
like,
gonna
okay,
ask. I was like, with their
how do I
stubborn defiance, and they can just sit in their backfield and just score 95 points or whatever.
yeah, but when you have a Corvus that flies over, guys get out or it's shot out from underneath them, and then you're like, actually, I took that away from you, and now you don't get your full 15. You'll never get your full 15 because I've taken the objective away from you for a turn. That's a big deal. A big loss.
All right. Well, hey, you want to get into uh your matches then? Because
Yeah.
this was NRTT, so 3. It looks like your record was 91, 39, and 80. I don't know why, but Best Coast pairings is not showing me for pairings. So I have premium.
Hmm.
It says that it's unhidden, or that they are hidden because I'm not a subscriber, but if I go into profile I am, but whatever. So let's just go over your matches. So 91.
Yeah.
You got a win on
So
91.
So round one, I played into a World Eaters player, and his list was a Terrax drill. He had Karn. He had a Chaos Lord. He had a bunch of berserkers, and then he had some cultists to help screen out. And then the linchpin of his list was kind of a couple of Volkite contemptors plus a Leviathan that had a like a grab bombard and a siege drill.
And a
And
melta gun. Whew.
yeah, yeah. And so he's relatively scary, but I made a judgment call because he made a big mistake. He made a mistake on his positioning because he had a Chaos Lord that was there to help buff the Volkites, and so that turn one, I went really aggressive with the planes, and so I flew in and I sniped the Chaos Lord out
So you
because I
won.
knew that. Huh?
You won. You won first turn.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I won the roll off for first turn, and so I flew in and I sniped out the Chaos Lord because I knew that the Volkite Contemptors could do work. But if I'm forcing him to either engage with the planes and have to take the -1 penalty, or have to shoot at the dreadnoughts where I can repair them back up, his firepower is going to be heavily blunted. And so I did that, and then I basically swept almost all of the infantry that was on the ground that was available to be shot at. So going into his turn one, he had the three dreadnoughts that were basically untouched, and then one or two infantry units that were left over. So he moved those up onto objectives, but he was kind of in a bad position because he knew that
Mm.
me going first, I was going to kill whatever I could off the table and then move on from there. So that's basically what happened. His Terrax drill came in, and it did a number on the Venerable in the back, and it put some work in on one of the Redemptors, but I managed to save it because the Redemptor was sitting inside of my invuln bubble, and then we kind of traded, and I ended up in a situation where it's basically all he had left was just two dreadnoughts and a handful of berserkers. So at the end of turn 3, we basically called it at that point because there was just he knew that it was going to be a complete washout at that point because I had basically lost nothing.
What did his obliterators do? I assume they were in deep
Uh,
strike and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, they came in out of deep strike, and he did. Uh, he retrieved Octarius data with them, which was he did that first, and then he moved around with them, and he did some shooting with them, but they didn't really contribute anything of consequence because he had to shoot them into dreadnoughts, which just that's not the thing that obliterators want to be shooting because you've got so many random variables on the gun, and then you have the negatives of having to shoot into something with an invuln save and -1 damage. So even if you're rolling the best, you're still
Yeah.
not getting max what you could be.
Excellent points there. When I've only played against obliterators like twice, and I think both times was my old 8th edition Grey Knights codex, and they were pretty scary.
Mhm.
So that World Eaters player, actually the person second.
Mhm.
And now tell me about round 2 where you won with a whopping 39 points.
So round 2 was played into another Deathwatch list.
I was gonna ask
Um,
about the other. This is good timing.
um, his list was very much in the line of thought of I'm going to take big bricks of infantry. Um, he had the the Gravis kill team that everybody's talked about, where
Hmm.
he had like 5 of the Eradicators and 5 of the heavy intercessors. He had the Apothecary. He had the captain giving off the aura. So it was a list that's just designed to be brick hard. It's very much a sledgehammer. If you choose to fly into it, it will break you on it because it's just so hard to remove it. So I had to make some judgment calls because this is not only was it a hard list to fight into, we were playing on a map that just was hard to do like high scoring for the types of list that I was running because it was a mission that was you gotta hold at least 2 to get 5, and so you look at that and you're like, oh, I can't afford to just throw things out and trade. So I decided to play the long game with him, and it turned into a very heavy a slugfest. And this is a match where um, I basically had to outthink the list that was being played against me because I could not defeat it mathematically. Um, And so when I'm talking about, oh, my transport gets shot out from underneath me, and then I use emergency disembark to take the objective away from you, that's basically what I had to do turn after turn after turn of play and do sacrifice plays of, well, I'm not going to be able to kill, a brick of, 5 Terminators and then 5 guys with storm shields and lightning claws. But if I, just nudge in onto the objective with just enough to turn on to take it away because both units are obsec, but I've got more guys on the point, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter how many hundreds of points worth of immovable infantry brick is there if I've sniped it away. And that's what I did. There are a couple real clutch moments in the game where um, movement mechanics and charge mechanics became really important, where he had left points where he left like not eradicators, inceptors to hold a point next to like an apothecary, and then I charged the apothecary and then used the charge distance to slingshot and pile into the inceptors and flip the objective away from him with my frag cannon team of all things, just because of how critical it was to slow him down, because he slowly marched up the board and he was shooting planes down if I let them get in range, which,
Yeah.
unfortunately, when you're playing that kind of matchup, you sometimes have to do. But it was very, touch and go, because like neither of us had hardly anything at the end of the game. Um, but it's one of those things that I have prepared for and part of the list design as well. Um, you know, being able to make those sacrifice plays against those invincible Death Stars, and then when you do down them, it's a big loss for him because they're taking while we stand, while we fight, and if you remove one of those big assets, you're like, oh well, sorry, you're down those victory points, and you can never get them back. And yeah, you've got to be maximizing everything that you're doing. It's no wonder that kind of list, it does well because it is a blunt force instrument, but it's very much anti the list design thought process that I have, which is I don't rate them super highly because they're very slow and they're easy to maneuver around. Um, which that's pick your preference. Do you prefer to be an immovable object, or do you prefer to be able to get to the point when you want it? And I choose to take that other approach,
Hmm.
which is more in line with some of the Xenos list design thinking of Drukhari or Harlequins, where they're more geared towards putting pressure on the point when they want it.
And just being all over the
Mhm.
map. Very cool.
Absolutely.
So that was a 39 to 35 game. So
Hmm.
not a very high scoring game for either of you. Um,
No.
Yeah, so those four eradicators were just running around being nuisances. I saw he was also running two eliminator squads with bolt um rifles. Those
They did
worry
not
for you at
contribute.
all?
Nope, they didn't contribute anything meaningful because I took call order against him,
Oh,
and I picked them as my one of my call order targets because he just had so few um, units in his list. He had like two heavy support, two fast attack. So I picked them, and then he ended up picking, I think it was his troops and his
mm,
fast, and I ended up killing off his fast, and I almost got his troops. But he basically, and that's part of the reason why I was less more in game, because he was like, I don't want to lose those two right off the bat. So he hid them in the back, and then they just never came out and did anything till like turn 5. And by that point, it was way too late.
yeah. And that's an interesting choice because like the camo cloak makes them decidedly hard to kill if you don't want them to kill or to die. Combined with the
Normally.
yes, and then combined with the fact that they're also yes normally not against your list, and then you can transhuman them and stuff, and you know they're pretty easy to keep alive. It's an interesting choice of call order.
Hmm.
I mean, ooh, excuse me, I just woke up, so um, I'm just Coal order is a choice that I feel I am not smart enough to ever make, so I just don't make it. I mean, you brought up an excellent point where if they have a wide tech list, so if they've picked few units in every category in every battlefield field role, so I mean, like you said, they have two fast attack, two heavy support, um, and if you only need to kill two units for 5 points, that's actually not bad. I just don't like the fact that it takes away two of your three choices. So like he picks first, and he's gonna pick whatever's hardest to kill. So troops, obviously. That was my thought when you brought up call order. And then you're gonna pick the one that you want to kill. So in this case, it would be heavy support, and then he's gonna pick whatever he thinks is his next hardest to kill, which apparently his fast attack. So um, I don't know. It always seems like a weird pick, but how high? So that scored you what, 5 points for this game?
Yes, it scored 5 in that particular matchup,
Mm-hmm.
but it also very much dictated the flow of the game. Because he, before we even rolled dice, he made a conscious choice of, well, I'm not going to commit, one of our eliminators now, 75 per. So he's not committing 10% of his army just right there. He says, I'm not going to put
Yeah.
them in a place they can be shot. I'm not going to put them in a place where they're going to contribute. That's a loss on his behalf. And then and it doubled down because it also means that he's picking the play of like, well, I'm going, while we stand or to the last. Then it puts the onus on me, like, well, anytime I succeed, you fail.
So he did to the last, and that would be kill
His most
teams.
expensive unit.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. It it looks like that would be his three kill team. Nothing else quite hit. Yeah, so it would be. Huh. Interesting choice. Oh, did he combat squad the Van Vets and everything?
Yeah, he combat squatted the Vanguard vets.
And then he had another Vanguard vet whole
Hmm.
squad run. Huh. Never
Yeah,
played
they were
Deathwatch
definitely
on Deathwatch. That
very.
does not seem like a super exciting game, but it sounds like yours was. If
It is a
there's
brutal slugfest. Like turn 3 is kind of like such a critical turn because he had taken a little bit of chip damage here and there, but that was the turn he committed to the middle, and that was the turn I turned on Toma Ectoclades, and so he threw up all his strats on the big, heavy intercessor brick, and I punched into it and I killed it to a man, which was such a huge loss for him because he was expecting it to stick around and do work.
yeah.
Um,
It's
and
almost
that
like
allowed me to capitalize.
it's like if you're gonna run an Indomitor brick like that, you're doubling down on such a high tech expensive unit that they brought this player brought the no, they didn't. Just brought the tome. Huh. So like usually when people are thinking about bringing an Indomitor kill team, they're thinking about stacking defense buffs, right? So like they'll give it a 5-up invul, and then they'll give it a 5-up feel no pain from the librarian. But he only had 1 HQ total. He brought the Tome of Ectoclades, not the Dominus Aegis. It's a very what
I could have sworn he had the Dominus Aegis in there. I remember him rolling. So I don't know if the list
oh
is wrong, if I'm
well
just remembering wrong.
I mean maybe he swapped it out at the end, but at least what's listed on Best Coast is he has a captain with jump pack and the tome, and that's it. No shield at all. So that
Hmm.
would imply to me that like Gravis is good. It is. But without that invul, man, like your las cannons are gonna have a great time. Your plasma guns are gonna have a great time, or your plasma guns. On your one's on your Vedra and one on your Redemptors. I don't know. But then also he maybe just made that choice to be like, no, I'm gonna stick this out there, and if it lives, it lives. If it dies, it dies. Okay. So your third matchup, like you won that one with 80 points. What was that one all about?
Yeah. So that one I played into a Blood Angels player. Is a list archetype that I was very familiar with. He was running a lot of Sanguinary Guard. He had Plasma Inceptors. He had Eradicators. But the general overall archetype is, we have the Sanguinary Guard, and they come up and they punch you in the nose, and if you're not careful, you lose. Um, because and I believe he also had a squad of Death Company as well in there somewhere. Because
Wow, he
Blood
had.
Angels have.
Whoa, I don't see any death company, but I do see or three very large groups of
Yeah.
sanguinary guard.
Yeah, the Sanguinary Guard were kind of the backbone of the list, um, but and he went first, so he couldn't really commit anything meaningful like damage wise, just with the weapons that he had and the threat ranges he had. He knew, and he couldn't make any first turn charges, which was good because I deployed back, so it wasn't even like an opportunity for like a long bomb. It just wasn't there. Um, then my turn happened. I choose to go into um, Devastator Doctrine, and then I pop Toma Ectoclades, and then I'd also taken reroll wounds against elites as well, and I shoved all of my Corvuses into a corner um, on his far right flank, and then I killed with the Redemptors plus the Corvuses. I killed something in the range of close to 15 to 20 of the Sanguinary Guard. I just vaporized them. I just removed them from the equation between ignore cover, rerolls. It just they were not a threat anymore after my turn.
Yeah, they're
and
they're
that kind of
expensive
really
models too.
dictated.
Like,
Yes.
they're 32 points apiece. So you
Hmm.
killed 20 of them right off the bat, or sorry, 15 of them right off the bat.
It was like 15 to 20. It was a
Whew.
lot. Um, it really neutered his ability to deal with the rest of the list because
Yeah.
his forward threat presence was very, very much diminished because I had deployed with a very thin left flank, and then I had my Redemptor brick on the right, and he'd kind of gone for a wide deployment, which is good, but it also means that once I know where your weapons are that can actually hurt the Corvuses, it makes my life a lot easier in terms of my movement phase to be able to pick the position where I can maximize the damage they're going to do to you and minimize the ability for you to hit me back.
So you
And so
just
once he,
just stuck all three of them in a blob in one corner.
yeah, I flew all three of them over onto the hard right flank and just ripped that flank open. By the time I was done, it was something like he was holding an objective with like two sanguinary guard, the captain, and like the apothecary, and that was like it. Um, so it was like very, very thin at that point, and so it opened up opportunities for me, but be able to take the objective from him, getting things out, apply pressure through the Redemptors, being able to slingshot one up and get him up in there, and smush a captain. Those were all things that kind of had to happen to win, but removing the sanguinary guard for the most part from the equation really tipped it in my favor. But I told the guy right at the start, like, this is a matchup that I think is going to go very poorly for you because this is a list archetype that I practice against a lot. And I know it doesn't have a ton of great answers to the Corvuses because you pay a lot of points for your sanguinary guard to be effectively fast terminators, and
Hmm.
this is a list that throws something that is even faster and has the type of weapons that they don't want to see, that ignore cover, has at least 1 or 2 points of AP with high volume of fire. um, so when you bring in these guys in units of 4, it's like, it's whatever. But when you start seeing people throw units of 10 up, and then you go, oh well, I have blast on that plasma, and you can leverage Toma Ectoclades really well, because then over a quarter of the list is just I get full rerolls to wound against it for that turn. You you can just leverage things and really, really punish an opponent who gets too aggressive, which is what happened here. He went too aggressive too early. He took a secondary. He took the Blood Angel secondary that um, you get more you get points whenever you have more units in your opponent's deployment zone than they have in yours, which really dictated to him how he needed to play. Like, he needed to do that aggressiveness to get those points, but it's a colossal mistake. It's basically Pickett's charge.
Yeah.
You're going to lose a lot of guys trying to get across the field to take advantage of that, and you're flying into so many guns with so many built-in rerolls that ignore cover and have high AP. It's a losing attrition battle that you're just not going to come back from.
Did um did did he try to shove any of the sanguinary guard into melee with your Corvuses, or there just weren't enough left for it to matter?
He got so on that one flank, he did manage to get a couple the remaining two, and then he had a unit on the far left flank that hopped up with a librarian, and they came down and they chewed up a kill team, but they did not want to engage with my venerable that was on that flank. And then he turned around and plasma cannoned them, and then there were only like 1 or 2 left, and then he made the charge, and he cleaned house on the librarian and the 2 sanguinary guard by himself. So he just didn't have volume after that first hit.
Yeah. Rerolling all wounds is good. We all know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, shoot. I mean, what kind of secondaries did you take on this one then? Did you know that you were gonna have to just guys of elites and you took Pole Order again, or?
No, I took engage. I took engage all 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
You always when you have 3 flyers, it's just kind of an auto gimme, like
Yeah.
take engage. Um, I took Oath of Moment in this game, and I want to say that I either took the secondary that was kill more every round, grind them down, or the one that was I think I took the one that was keyed off of his wounds, because it was just a ton of infantry bodies. So it was kind of like, if I'm going to be killing, then may as well just be getting points for it. That's the other thing that kind of this list you have to be very savvy with, is you need to be stacking your secondaries in a, every list needs to be stacking their secondaries, but you need to be stacking your secondaries in a way that naturally progresses the game plan that you're trying to accomplish with them. Like taking raised banners with this list is just kind of fruitless, because you only have the so many infantry assets that you can play with, and if
Yeah.
you're spending a whole turn just sitting there raising a flag, you're not out there doing anything of use. Now I know how Deathwatch have mechanics that allow you to be able to shoot and still complete an action and things like that, but you're running a real tight game in terms of your CP and action economy, which I just don't think the list can really accomplish. Now there are other Death Watch lists for certain that raise banners is a no-brainer if you're running a ton of the kill teams, but I'm just not.
That makes sense. Well, I mean, shoot. That's the. I mean, how would you play? How would you play this list into Drukhari?
Well, I played this list into
I
Brad
know,
Chester's Drukhari, but that
but you
was
said you
that was a
didn't.
learning experience.
Yeah, you said that the new codex had just come out and like for
Mhm.
Drukhari, and you didn't know it yet. So like, what have you learned? How would you play
Well,
this
I've
into Drukhari now?
the one of the things I've kind of learned fighting into Drukhari is they don't like being stretched. They don't like it when you put them in a position where um, they can't commit overwhelmingly to something, which plays into the overall design aspect of I'm not committing more than a couple hundred points in any kind of sacrifice play. Um, so when you put them in a position of like, well, I can hop up and over and I can murderize, one thing. If I've minimized my losses and then I remove their threat capability there, they might have other assets that allow them to get over to whatever objective. But once you've thinned them down, they become much less dangerous. And once you've demeched them, they become way less dangerous, because losing that extra 3 inches of movement off of the transports really humbles their threat range, because they do get advance and charge, on turn 2. So you should be looking at, well, what can I do to really minimize their ability to get everything they want in a place all at once? And if they do get there, what unit profiles do I have that can actually make it unpleasant for them to have to actually commit in? Which is why dreadnoughts are great, because they're one of the things that they typically don't want to be
Yeah,
dealing with,
unless
as
they have a
they have
bunch
high.
of haywire, but yeah,
Well, most of them don't
right.
run haywire in my
That's
experience, and
that's
that's more of a,
because
a Harlequin trick.
yeah, well, there aren't a lot of vehicles in the meta right now other than dreadnoughts, so
Hmm.
you don't really why tech into something that might not see play, right?
Hmm. And yeah, playing the list into to Drukhari, you play the list into like Ad Mech. Ad Mech, you need to be looking at potentially reserving things. You need to be looking at potentially, you may conceivably blow all of your command points before the top of the first turn, with either reserves or by playing the shroud field on the Corvuses to prevent them from being shot at. Just because, now that Ad Mech have been a little bit defanged, they're not nearly as scary. Especially because people are teching away from taking, there were lists out there that were like, oh, I got like 18 chickens. It's just not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Losing core on
Goodbye,
them is a big,
core.
big
Yeah.
hit. So those are kind of the big boogeymen floating around out there right now. So that's kind of how I would play into them. Um, Definitely, like with Ad Mech, um, you need to be looking at what ways you can leverage into them, because they still have plenty of things that they can do that are insidious, to hurt you, but you basically commit yourself to that game of like, well, I can't really kill you, but I can outscore you. I can find ways to outscore you. um Grey Knights just came out, and I'm like kicking around ideas like there's a way to get 90-point games, and you could conceivably never actually engage the enemy. And it's all just positional based. And so that kind of mentality of going back to what I said earlier, where it's like I'm expecting my opponent to make the best move every time, and you need to be looking at it from the perspective too that there are things that you can't defeat. Like there are models and builds where it's just like I don't either have the volume of firepower to do this, or I don't have the melee to do this. So then what are my options to become victorious in that situation?
Hmm.
Whether it's through maneuver warfare, whether it's, correct secondary picking, like if you've taken, to the last where you're just preserving your assets, whether you're taking a mission secondary where it's just, oh, I, run to the middle and I take 3 points just because I took that 1 point. It causes you to really think outside the box of how Warhammer is kind of typically played. Like in that second game, that list where it's all this heavy infantry and it is a sledgehammer that just slowly walks up the field. It has one game plan. It has one real route to victory, which is why I don't particularly like that list archetype, because it means that your opponent knows what you are doing. I throw down 3 Corvuses with all these guys inside of them, and now my opponent is not sure. They don't know where I'm going. They don't know what I'm going to take from them on that first go when we are at our strongest. Which is a very big, important consideration. Is if you can, get in there and you've started the attrition trade in your favor, uh, that definitely sets you up, because you need to be stacking. You need to be stacking the route to victory. It's not just, oh, I put down 700-point invincible Death Star. It's I've put down the 700-point invincible Death Star, and then it has this character to back it up so that it can advance and charge, or it can fall back and shoot. Whatever additional mechanics that you've thrown on top of it, and then on top of that you go, oh, I have to the last, or I have Oath of Moment. If I get this unit into the middle of the board, all of a sudden I'm holding the midpoint. I'm in threat range to 2 or 3 additional objectives that I could charge onto and clear anything off of. And now all of a sudden I've become something that my opponent really has issues resolving.
Yeah.
Um, a lot
The
of
mobility
the
of the Corvuses.
yeah, a lot of the mid board tables that I've seen, with people who are still, I guess everybody's still kind of learning the game, but people who are still trying to get more in tune with, like, how do I do successful at like competitive Warhammer? They typically, I'm talking about stacking your route to victory. They typically only maybe take 1 or 2 things into consideration, and then all right, that's my
My game
victory.
plan. Yeah.
But issue you run into is that you need to be playing the game for all 5 turns. You need to be playing it in a way that um, you've accounted for this unit is great turn 1, but how good is it when I've taken 2 or 3 turns of shooting and now I'm down to like 4 guys? Is it still worth my time? Um, what can I do with such a severely depleted unit on turn 5? And if the answer is, well, not a lot, then you need to be looking at like, well, what happens if somebody, guts me turn 1? What are my options there? Um, so that's kind of like my thought process. That's also why I'm really heavily, into like compartmentalize your list, make it so that your losses are not so devastating that you get a bad turn where oh, my Thunderhammer Storm Shield Terminator blob of 10 Terminators with an apothecary and you know uh Azrael, maybe if we're playing like Deathwing. All of a sudden it's like, oh well, I rolled like a bunch of ones and now just 2/3 of this unit is gone.
Yeah.
Oh well, like it is a dice game, so you have to plan around the expectation that someday you will just have the worst game.
Yeah. So yeah. So I did actually have a note here to ask you. How do you think this list might play into the new Thousand Suns and Grey Knights? Like, I know you're starting up Grey Knights. That was my first army. I've played one game of Grey Knights now. It's on my stream, by the way. If anybody watching this is bored, um, we had brand new microphones and the audio's a little low, but other than that, I think it was a fun game. So you should check that out. But how do you think these 3 Corvuses are gonna work into the new Grey Knights? And then obviously a slightly different but sort of similar matchup will be Thousand Suns.
So I think for the most part, um, I think it will play just fine into them, because the fundamental thing that it relies on the most is movement, and that's not something that's really changing with Grey Knights or Thousand Suns. They have a couple mechanics that allow them to move very fast, but it's also like Grey Knights in particular have a very big risk factor, um, because they don't pack nearly as many models into a list. So they have
True.
issues where they can get really, really overextended. And this is something I was talking about earlier, where you're committing assets to do work, and sometimes Grey Knights will let you down on that front just because they go wide. They have units that deploy that'll fly off on a flank, and it's like, oh yeah, this whole unit has 15 attacks. They're all strength 5 or 6, AP 2 or 3, and damage 2, or doing however many mortals in the tide. But then they get in, and then it's like, oh, you didn't quite kill that unit there, and now you've taken casualties back, and you didn't accomplish what you needed to do, or you lost people on Overwatch, or like there are a lot of dominoes that can fall on a Grey Knights list, um, just because of the nature of the way that Grey Knights kind of work. Um, Being reliant on the psychic phase means that you've opened yourself up to avenues of failure for a unit to peril, kill itself, or a critical spell to fail, things like that. So you're not always going to get everything you want out of a unit all the time. You can do a lot of things to make it a very high percentage, but it's never 100% guarantee. Um,
Yeah.
by that same token, with like Thousand Suns, um, it remains to be seen like what kind of archetypes shake out with Thousand Suns with the new book. I know people are talking about teching heavily into rubrics and the Terminators, because they've both gotten a lot of improvements. Their big thing, looking at their psychic trees and things like that, is they're going to probably on average do more mortal wounds in their psychic phase compared to Grey Knights,
Yeah.
but they don't look like they're nearly as mobile, which could be a problem, just because if you don't have a way to really commit heavy board presence and take control of objectives, then you run into issues of just, piecemealing in, and then, you're making my target selections very easy of like, well, if I just kill this, it means that they will never be able to make a charge, or if I just kill this, they will never be able to hold that objective. Um, so I think it'll play into him just fine. I might since this list does not have a psyker in it.
I was
Um,
just gonna point out, yeah, Abhor the Witch is an auto take, obviously.
Yeah, and I might consider rearranging some of the kill teams around. Might consider dropping like the Venerable, taking like a Calexis Assassin to apply more pressure. So there are a couple like tech picks that I would need more just board time with to see just how bad the Mortal Wound input is. Um, even if it's, going into those vehicles and such, we have Armor of Contempt expressly for just that purpose of like trying to null some of the more horrendous Mortal Wound tricks, like with the like that Grey Knight Librarian, where you can take the Warlord trait on him, and I
The
think it's
Mortal
the
Wombs,
gems and Toku.
yeah,
Yeah, so he can do like somewhere in the range of like 9 and I think it's
it's
12
12.
Mortal Wounds in a phase. So very, very scary stuff, but that's why those defensive tricks are there.
I mean, yes, the librarian can do that, but I mean, now you're sticking out a character, and I don't know. I mean, I love all the theory hammer. I do. I don't think you're gonna see that librarian on the field.
I'm 100%. I'm gonna field them when I get
Oh
my hands
really?
on a. Yeah, it's because you can spend CP to give his powers additional range. You can spend CP
Yeah.
to let him. I believe it's roll 3d6, drop the lowest
Yep.
for a phase.
And you can have
You
him
can.
cast 2 powers or 3 powers,
Mhm.
because the librarian is one of the only characters left in the new codex that'll actually cast 2 base. So yeah,
Mhm.
for 1 CP you can have him cast 1 more. For 1 CP you can give his powers 6-inch range, and for 1 CP you can roll 3d6, drop the lowest.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
yeah, I think that particular librarian is a very much a scary pick, because since he is in Terminator armor, he can be deep struck.
Hmm.
And if you really want to be sneaky with him, you can deep strike him in, do all your shenanigans, and then he still has the you can put the gem on him that allows him to relocate when he is shot at.
Hmm.
So you can just be like, whatever, I'm gone. Or he could conceivably be moved around the board as a piece because of gate infinity. So is there a place on the board that your opponent doesn't want you to jump like 9 or 12 mortal wounds? Cool, he's there. Um, so I think that's a pretty savage um, way to kick somebody in the pants from behind. Especially because since they are mortal wounds, that means they can go into things that just people expect that their things to be alive, and then suddenly they're not.
Like burst crawlers.
Yeah, plague burst crawlers, deathwing terminators, like just there's a number of things that I think he just fixes, because Grey Knights do not have high AP shooting for the most part, um, aside from maybe like the Dread Knight weapons, but everything else is just
Even
AP1
even
or
the
storm
even
bolters.
the Dread Knight weapons aren't high. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I know with Cybolt ammunition you can get a whole lot of um -1 AP shooting out of 1 unit, but um the heavy side cannon on the Dread Knights is only -2. It's not -3. Like you pointed out earlier, the Vendread, or the Dreads in general, the only way to get plasma in the whole codex. Um,
Yeah,
so
we were having a little bit of a discussion about Grey Knight lists beforehand, and I'm actually pretty sold Grey Knight wise on Venerables. I actually think the Venerable Dreadnoughts are quite good, even with Honored Knight. because you can still spend the strat to give them rerolls if you need. But being able to apply plasma in a list that doesn't have plasma is a pretty big deal. And the other thing that I was kind of thinking with them also is looking at like secondaries that you can take. They're one of the units that I don't really mind having sit in the back, and they can sit on points and do the psychic action secondary and still contribute their firepower. Now, granted, any Grey Knight unit could do that, but not every Grey Knight unit is a heavy plasma cannon reaching out and touching the other side of the board.
On
Whereas with
twos.
if you throw a strike squad down, it's like, well, now I've lost all of this unit's potential because they're not really contributing their melee, and storm bolters are great and all, but they're not sweeping the universe kind of like they may have in previous editions.
Yeah, let's look at this actually. Got a Venerable Dread Knight, 145 points. You can give them, I mean, if you just want them to shoot, you can give them the plasma cannon and the missile launcher. It's only 145 points because plasma is free. Now you have -1 damage. Got a 3-up base save. They are cores, so they if you put Wisdom of the Ancients on them, they could reroll ones to hit or wound, depending on what you need. Plasma cannon's got a 36-inch range of heavy strength 8 overcharge with 3 damage. Only -3 AP.
It's strength 9, I believe, when it's
Okay.
overcharged.
Hold on, let me check. So I was looking at
Or
Battle
no,
Scribe,
I'm
but let
thinking
me.
of Redemptor.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't realize that the I didn't
Because the
realize
secret
that
sauce
this.
on them is they're damage 3.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so the heavy plasma is base strength 7, -3 AP, 2 damage. So the Primaris stuff is just better by 1 AP and 1 strength.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. And actually DE6 instead of 3.
Yeah,
Man, the
but you're
the
also
the Redemptor gun is good.
the Redemptor gun is very, very good. But the venerable, you work with the tools you have,
Oh yeah,
and that's the reason why, like, pretty much all of my Marine lists of any stripe, I've got venerables marching around. Grey Knights, their special take on it is they're psychic dreadnoughts,
yeah,
so you can do mortal wounds with them if somebody decides to get close. But if you're also in the tide where you're getting cover, all of a sudden you can cast armored resilience because that's the power they come standard with. So now you have a 1-up dreadnought against shooting, which is
yeah.
very hard to shift, very, very hard to move
And
out of the way.
and if it's in any area terrain like a forest or whatever, it's also one harder to hit.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes, so it's very, very, very much, you look at it. I think people are very down on the Green Knights Codex because it's not like Ad Mech, where you have 15 stacking buffs where you turn, an 8-point model into something that should easily be, you know, you'd happily pay like 20 points for all the benefits like a Skitari runs around with. Um, but the tools that you do have within the Green Knight Codex, I think, are good and open for players that are willing to really get their nose to the book and kind of explore, because it is very much a codex that has been reformed and reshaped by the new
yeah.
edition, by the new book, so it doesn't play anything like it used to,
No,
which
it does not.
that's that is
um,
part of the course with Grey Knights.
I again, I've only been playing eighth or since the start of ninth, basically. The twilight weeks of eighth. Um, but with the eighth edition Grey Knights codex, yeah, we had to like a hide shooty army where you didn't really put a whole lot of things out on the board, because the the firepower was just too much. There was no way for us to move fast that wasn't gate. We didn't have access to as many units to teleport strike as we do in the new codex. And I agree with you that the new Great Ice Codex is not as good as Drukhari or Ad Mech was, but those ones had some busted ass stuff right out the gate. And other than the wombo combo of Words of Power and Tide of Convergence with Falchion, Rapier, Interceptors with +1 attack and exploding sixes, potentially doing 24 mortal wounds or whatever in the melee phase, that's theoretically insane, but I've only seen that combo in a bat rep successfully pulled off one time as well, because that's actually a hard combo to pull off. Because, like you said, you're relying on so many things that can fail, right? So, for whatever reason, Grey Knight chaplains don't get Master of Sanctity, so you're only getting 3 ups for that one litany, and then you need all those powers to actually go off. We don't get access to advance and charge, so something's got to be kind of close to you, or you get lucky with a charge. You have to be in Tide of Convergence for that wombo combos, so you can't rely on Tide of Celery to get you that 9-inch charge, right? So yeah, I mean, where versus Drukhari, which they had the incinerator, or what were they? The racks with the liquefier guns and the open topped raiders, and then they had the triptych whip that was busted with the warlord trait, so that the 60-point succubus got like 40 attacks or whatever. Or then there's Ad Mech, where the laser chickens had core, and then obviously all the stacking like Lucius buffs and that one stratagem for auto wounding on 4s. I mean, Grey Knight's got a similar codex or strat in this codex, but it's auto wounds on 6s. So even after the nerf to make it the nerf to Ad Mech to go from auto wounding on 4s to auto wounding on 5s, it's still twice as good as the one that the Grey Knights just got. So yeah, anyway, this is a long rant to basically say that I think the Grey Knight Codex is good. I don't think there was some obviously busted combos right out the gate like there were with Drukhari and Ad Mech. But also, you see Orks taking podium spots now, and as far as I know, I haven't heard anybody talking about how busted Orks are. I've heard a little bit of grumbling about their really cheap truck that's got great out of line of sight shooting, and then I've personally fought like a Beast Naga boss on Squigosaur, which is just bonkers good for 145. But if those are the 2 best units in their whole codex, that's okay. But for
kill rigs are on my radar, but those haven't been released yet, I don't believe. But once they get around to it, it's kind of like it's less than 200 points, and it's a character, it's a psyker, it's a transport, it's T8. When it casts, its gun becomes like auto hitting. Like it just has a whole stacking thing. Yeah, the Warboy kill rig. There's something where you look at them and then you look at like a Land Raider and you're just like, why is the Land Raider so expensive and this is so cheap?
Yeah.
Because it also has a melee profile as well that isn't bad at all. So it's just it has all of the things that are fantastic, and you can, since it's a character, you can do funny things like, for warlord traits and such on it.
That's awesome.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
but
but getting back to like Grey Knights and such, I think I played Grey Knights, with the old book, like the not sixth edition, but or seventh edition. I played the fourth edition book when they were demon hunters, and we got Matt warded, and I played a bit of that, and I got
man,
bored with the army, so I sold it off, like 10 years ago. But getting nostalgic about it. But looking at this new iteration of it, I just kind of look at it from the perspective of like, it's very similar to Blood Angels, except just what if every unit that you had was Sanguinary Guard? What if every unit you had was Blade Guard? Um,
yeah. I mean, the defensive
it
profiles
skews
are
you in a
very
particular
different,
way.
but like, yeah, the fact that every nemesis weapon other than falchions is base 2 damage, three attack, +2 attacks to most of the army, +1 attack to a lot of it. The new nemesis dread knights are so good. 4-up
Yeah,
invulns across the board is just like awesome. One more wound, one more movement, and that sword with the sweep um, attack is just,
yeah,
if you have a,
very good.
yeah, if you have a rapier's grandmaster dread knight, like you could go in there and do 14 mighty sweep attacks with the sword.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
pretty nuts. Yeah.
it gets pretty scary.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at competitively. Like I'm looking to get my toes into to Grey Knights next, and my whole journey with Deathwatch, it started right around after the codex dropped, and everybody was down on them, and then I won, an RTT, and Goonhammer, um, did a shout out to the to this list that I ran, and I was like, oh well, that's crazy, and I decided I was gonna to carry that torch to see you know people appreciate the codex and appreciate what the lists could do, and we're getting a similar reaction here with Grey Knights, where the internet hot take is like, burn my army, throw it away, or in my case, start picking up models cheap on eBay,
Yeah.
and then play the
That's
list until people start recognizing what's good in it, and then all of a sudden, in the space of 6-8 months, it goes from, oh man, Deathwatch are the worst marine supplement to, oh yeah, these are the best. This is the best
yeah.
supplement.
Yeah, no
Um,
joke.
so it's one of those things where I really enjoy playing the underdog factions.
Well, I don't think this is an underdog, and I really think that it's funny how fast people realize Deathwatch isn't a joke faction. You know, John Lennon winning a GT with them, the excellent, or Fred Fortman won the Charity Hammer Prep GT with Deathwatch. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's a great army. It's definitely flexible as hell. I mean, I still love my Deathwatch. I don't see myself spreading out into a third army just yet, just because there's so much depth still see play with both my Deathwatch and my Grey Knights. I don't see anything else on the horizon that's gonna make me want to switch. Not yet,
Mm,
anyway.
just give it time.
Oh yeah,
Some new model will come out, and you'll be like, man, I want a whole army of that.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just got new Nemesis Dread Knight that'll be in the mail soon. finally starting to whittle down my Deathwatch pile of shame. Because that's the thing about Deathwatch, right? Is like because we have access now to the entire Space Marine Codex, I see like, oh, that's a cool unit. Wonder if I can make that work. All right, I'll buy a box, right? And the next thing I know,
Hmm.
I've got half of my army is only primed with no paint on them yet, just because I want to keep trying new stuff.
Yeah, well, experimentation, that's so important to keeping the game fresh and to getting your enjoyment out of it
So yeah.
because it can get stale.
Well, um, Nevin, I think I'm gonna call it. It's been an hour and 40 minutes. Thank you so much for your time again.
My pleasure.
You've given me a lot to think of about. Congratulations on your RTT win. Are you going to be? I heard you're going to be going to another couple events here over the next month or so.
Yeah, I've got a pretty busy schedule. Tomorrow there's a charity event happening at one of our local shops. Then the week after that, there's going to be an RTT at another local shop that I'm going to. Then we're looking probably like the second week of September. There's probably going to be another gem hammer. And then in October, I'm getting ready to go to CincyCon and do CAG bashes, big event, and that's going to hopefully be a GT or maybe even a major. It has in years
Ooh.
past. We'll see how things are going with COVID and everything like that. You can never tell with how things are going. So hopefully, stuff gets under control and it's not like a situation where we just need to cancel things for public safety. So, you know, everything's kind of up in the air, but I have high hopes for the future.
Do you think you'll be bringing Deathwatch to all of those?
Well, I know tomorrow we're running. It's a doubles event, so we're running Pure Nights. Me and one of my training partners, Ben Stipp. I actually got my girlfriend involved with the hobby. So she painted up an armature, and so she's never played, but she really loves, like, my hobby. She's very interested in what I do, so I got her an armature and she painted it up, and then I'm going to run it in the tournament, and then I'm going to tell her all the crazy things that happen through the day because it's a very narrative event.
Ah, okay,
So it's not like ITC or anything like that.
gotcha. Well, still, like,
So
this sounds really cool.
yeah, we're definitely. It's been something that I know Ben. Um, his life has been very busy because he's got young kids and things like that. So he's finally getting back out to enjoy an event. Because the last time I think he went out to an event was back when I went to Motor City Mayhem with him, which was back in like March or April. Like, it's been a while.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, hey man, thanks a lot. You and I are in touch all the time, so. What are the
Yeah.
odds you'll be out for LVO 2022 in January?
Uh, well, I think it's already sold out, isn't it?
It it, it is. I mean, I'm sure you could find a ticket if you're willing to pay
um,
for it, but
I don't think I don't think this. I'll be going this year. Because A, it's sold out, and I don't feel like fighting the scalpers, and B, just
got you
with the
there. Yeah.
way COVID and everything like that, you know, my work would probably somebody would have a stroke there. I'm sure if I told them that I was deciding to travel across state lines and
Gotcha.
the whole thing. But that's the times we live in, right?
Yeah. Well, I
So,
mean, yeah, be be cool to hopefully Delta will start falling off and we'll have a nice total reopening
mhm.
play. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Well, that's all
Oh,
you can do.
yep.
Hope.
Exactly. All right, I will talk
You take
to
care.
you later, sir. Bye.
All right.